Welcome to Lead Stronger Longer, the podcast that inspires you to lead your life purposefully, personally, and professionally. Today, I have a very special guest who knows firsthand the journey of finding your voice and speaking with confidence. Joining us is Paul Rakowicz, a certified vocal coach specializing in vocal revival and stamina. Paul's journey began as a seasoned executive, relying on his voice daily until he encountered a significant obstacle: vocal fatigue following a personal loss. Instead of letting it define him, Paul made a pivotal choice. He invested in speaker-based vocal coaching, ultimately transforming not only his voice, but also his life. Armed with over 30 years of executive management experience and the acclaimed Roger Love method, Paul now empowers professionals to overcome obstacles such as anxiety and embarrassment in their own speaking. Today, we're delving into Paul's journey and exploring how he turned adversity into opportunity and uncovering the keys to finding your voice and leading stronger longer. Welcome to the conversation with Paul Rakowicz of PR Vocal Coaching. I'm so happy to have you here and really hear this story because I think so many need to know this piece about our voice and expressing and speaking up, especially in today's culture and climate. So we always like to start out with your favorite quote or mantra. What would that be?
Well, first off, I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Stephana, for inviting me. And I know that you were on my podcast recently and you did a great job. So I don't know how I'll be able to do as good a job as you did, but I'm going to just try and be myself. All right?
Perfect.
All right, good. Well, when I think of quotes, I'm not big on mantras and things like that, but I do have a couple of quotes in my mind all the time. And I'm a spiritual person, I'm a Christian, so they come from Scripture. One is poverty of spirit, and one is glory in the Lord. Because I think with those two things, we can have a steady approach to life, because we're going to have all kinds of ups and downs. And if we're not able to walk a steady path through all of that, we're going to have a hard time making it. And we're going to, and you know this, you meet people all the time and you help them who are burning out. Poverty of spirit just asks us to be humble, to recognize that we're created and there's a God who created us and he's a steady force, but we're going to bounce around a little bit because there's a lot of training we do here. So that humility helps us to walk throughout this life. And even in my coaching, I have this concept of happy, humble confidence. And that comes from this particular quote. And then the other one is just to glory in the Lord, because if you have something good happen, it's good to give him credit. And if you have something bad happen, it's good to know that he'll help you through it. And this way, again, you can keep a steady keel through all of those things. So those are two quotes that I have in my mind all the time, regardless of what's happening, to try and help me make it through all the ups and downs of life.
Thank you for that. So I'd like to hear your story, if you would. Tell us the story about what really led to your specialization. I alluded in the bio, and I'd really like to dive a little bit deeper if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, it's a little bit of a sad story, so I don't want anybody to be too sad about it because it's some years ago. But back in 2017, so I'd been married for 27 years and I lost my wife then to cancer. And that is a great loss and it creates a lot of grief. But grief is God's healing balm. It helps us heal a broken heart. There's nothing that'll heal a broken heart other than going through grief that I'm aware of. So in that time, really what happened to me is probably around 6 months, I ended up just sort of really being more by myself than anything else. And in being more by myself, just to go through all the emotions and all the feelings of grief that you have, I wasn't aware at the time, but it has other impacts on you. So I made it through all those things and then started to feel better. And I remember I was sitting in my chair. It was December 15th. I was sitting in my chair in my bedroom. I wasn't talking out loud to myself or anything. I was just sitting there, I was by myself. And I just said out of the blue, I just said, well, I think I feel better. And then when I said that, I thought to myself, well, why did I say that? And I started to think about it and I said, I think I might feel better. And so I started to get back out into life and do the different things that you need to do, and was working again and all that sort of stuff. But then over a little time, as I started to use my voice back in my career, I had this vocal fatigue happen to me. Never had it before. And all my life, I've always said talking is my favorite sport. So I've always been a big talker and I would talk loud and I never lost my voice, never had any issue with that. But here I was having this problem and it was a new thing. So I started looking for solutions and I found Roger Love and started to do work with him and ultimately became certified with him after I had solved my own problem. But what I learned in that is, and he teaches this and I find this true with my students, there's often an emotional thing underneath some of the vocal issues that you have. And mine was, as I think about it and as I thought about it then, it was like my body was saying, hey, you walled yourself off to deal with this grief, and that's a good thing, that's okay. But it had the impact of walling your voice off from the world. And so it's like a change in perspective. Hey, I'm okay now, and I can again use my voice and share myself with the world, because you have this fear. It hurts if you share yourself with the world and something happens. But you have to, you get over those things and then you can go back out. And then once you realize, okay, look, I can go out in the world and share myself again. And if something happens, it happens. I can't control that. And that was an underlying cause, I think, of my vocal fatigue. And that got resolved, and I just started doing the vocal coaching and all that sort of thing. And I really enjoy it because I know how deeply the voice impacts who we are, what we are, and things like that. And people that struggle with their voice in any way, there's usually something that when we change their perspective, it really takes their vocal training to the next level.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that 100%, in that our voice and our physical body as well is impactful. And that I work in that holistic piece, looking at that 360 degrees. The voice is key for us being able to express ourselves. And I've experienced loss as well in that. And I am, my condolences for your loss. And I recall constantly having just stuck pain there, just stuck pain because of not being able to fully feel the grief. And I think that it's a topic that we need to talk more about in our society, because we do all, and this is generally speaking, but when we are leaders that are driven and really expected to stay high performing, and the pressure is constantly on, at some point something's going to give, whether that's your body, whether that's your performance, whether that's your voice. So to have you be able to talk about this in this way, I think is very important, and also beneficial for anyone who hears this and understands, oh wow, yeah, that could be what's going on. And then maybe have some tools in a way that actually can support that person in getting through, not just being able to get to the end result of being able to speak fully, but also handling and addressing that underlying root cause. So appreciate you sharing that.
Mhm.
In terms of, so you've been doing the voice piece now for several years, and often I like to talk about early crucial mistakes. So these are really opportunities for our listeners to hear from someone of your expertise, your experience, not only of something that you went through as a period of struggle. And maybe I understand the loss piece, but I'm curious in terms of what, if there was another experience that you learned from, and how that was maybe significant on your impact of the work that you do now, maybe a little bit later down on the chain of pieces. What did you learn from it? How did you, how has it since influenced you and your ability as a leader in this field?
Sure. I think that I don't have any one particular thing to talk about when we talk about this part of it, because I think we all deal with all kinds of wins and losses every day. And we succeed sometimes and we fail sometimes, and it's all a part of life. So to me, the biggest thing that I think about with a question like this is, how do we view life itself? Do we embrace that life is emerging? So, there's this concept of we're always becoming. Well, if we're always becoming, then we can't be stuck in anything. And if we succeed at something or if we fail at something, we can't be stuck in either one of those, because then we're not becoming, we stopped. So it's like, can we embrace the emergent nature of the world? Can we embrace the emergent nature of life? And to me, that is what I think about with a question like this. It isn't necessarily for me one particular problem or something like that, because I have a whole list of things that didn't work out. But the question is, over time, you get better at embracing the emergent nature of life itself. And in embracing that kind of feeling, then you have a better chance of dealing with it. And one of the things I think about with all of that is, what are the processes that you have to deal with life? And are those processes, are they processes that work for emergent situations? So life itself is emergent. So do your processes of life allow for all the things that happen with emergent experiences? So if we have, hey, I'm going to plan for something, and here's all my plans, and here's my to-do list, and then I mark each one off, and then if anything happens, I'm thrown off course. Well, that's a process that isn't going to work very well, because things are always going to happen. So this whole thing gets then into goal setting. Am I setting goals that are like, not only is this what I'm going to achieve, but this is how I'm going to achieve it, and this is exactly what it's going to look like? Because those are goals you're never going to make, because life doesn't work that way. But if you can understand, hey, I want this certain kind of outcome, and then you have processes that allow you to work toward that outcome in a way that allows the outcome to emerge itself from all the different things that happen, then you can enjoy that journey. So people talk about, well, are you enjoying the journey? Well, if you don't have processes that are emergent in nature, you won't enjoy the journey no matter what you do. So those are just some thoughts I have about a question like that. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's beautiful. Thank you. I really find that lovely, and just having the conversations that we've had. It's wonderful to be able to just step back and look at things from a different perspective. I think that leaders who are very driven and do have those goals and do have those, this must get done, especially I think for corporate executives, there's certain expectations that are pretty intense, and it is, this is going to get done, or here are the consequences. So and that causes a lot of unnecessary stress. So to have that viewpoint, I think that's worth contemplating and looking at. What is that in terms of your processes? And that may also be what your advice would be, but I'm wondering two things. If you have any other advice for leaders to lead stronger, longer, and maybe that could be even in the form of a book. Maybe it's a book that has had a major impact on you as a leader.
I think that being a continuous learner is the number one thing I feel is important for any leader. And even if it's just, I'm going to lead my own self, I need to be continuously learning, because it comes back to one of the earlier questions. We're always becoming something. Well, we're either becoming something better, or we're just going backwards and we're becoming towards the end, and we don't want that. So I think continuous learning is probably the biggest thing in my head about what do we have to do to be good leaders, even if it's just of our own self. And when I think about that, a couple of books that come to mind. First off, I am, like I said, a Christian and a spiritual person. So for me, reading the Bible every day is the most important thing, and I do that each morning and evening. And I think that's a big part of continuous learning. the second part of that is, are there some books and things like that that really help us understand how to create an environment that allows for emergent processes to unfold? And a couple that I have read that I like, and there's just so many. So we're reading books every day, every week, every month, every year. So there's a lot of books. So it's hard to pick any. But one of them that I like is Principle-Centered Leadership by Stephen Covey, because it's not rules-based. And I always say, if we're going to live a rules-based life, it's not going to be very exciting, and we're not going to get the outcomes that we want to, because things are always changing and you can't just follow rules. But if you're principle-based, you have an opportunity to understand conceptually what you're doing, and then you have all kinds of freedom to get to that outcome that you're aiming for. So Stephen Covey does a nice job in his book, Principle-Centered Leadership. And another book that I like that really helps anyone who reads it is The Power of Habits. So The Power of Habits is great, because if you are principle-centered and you're continuously learning, you're going to want to create new habits as you're learning new things. And this book is a great book to help you learn how to do that. So just those two books alone would help anybody, wherever you're at, whatever kind of leader you are. You need to continuously be learning and get better. And those two books would help any leader, wherever they're at on the path, to continue their journey.
Both excellent. Thank you for those recommendations. So as we wrap up, what would you say is the most important thing for a leader to know about their voice and speaking?
I always believe that in vocal training for speakers, we're going to connect our mind and body through our voice. And if we do that, then what it allows us to do is be authentic without trying. So we all have all these emotions inside of us, and then we try and hide them and cover them up. But if we get comfortable with our emotions so that we can share them, and we know we can share them because we've been trained to connect our mind and body through our voice, then this means that as a leader, we'll be able to share in any situation with another human being the intent that we have in the conversation. So if we're going to have a hard conversation with, say, an employee who isn't doing well, but because we're good leaders, we care about them. Well, when we say those words, we can infuse those words with our care and concern for them. And if we do vocal training for speakers, we would know how to do that. We would trust ourselves that we could do that. So the way we speak the words, the person we're talking to would understand that, yeah, this is a hard message, but they care about me, so it's coming from a good place. So this is important to a leader. If a leader is going to share congratulations with somebody who's doing a great job, well, they need to infuse that message with a very different set of emotions. They need to intentionally create emotions in that message that weren't in the other message. And they need to know how to do that. They need to know that they can do it. They need to be trained. One of the things we say is, great communicators aren't naturals, they're well trained. So if we haven't been vocally trained, we're all on the scale of doing, some of us are not so good, some of us are really good, but wherever you're at, you can get better. It goes back to continuous learning. So if I'm a leader, no matter where I'm at, if I haven't done vocal training for speakers, I would want to, because I want to know that what I'm doing is working. Example, I've worked with doctors who, when they're working with potential new patients, the way they were speaking, the patients were wandering off, and a very small percentage did business with them. Then they did vocal training, and they understood what was happening to them in those situations, and they learned how to infuse their message to those potential patients with the emotions they intended all along. And all of a sudden, their rate of people wanting to then take their course of action that's being suggested by that doctor went way up. They're saying all the right word, all the same words. The words were right all along, but what was infused in those words from an emotional standpoint wasn't so right. So a leader, how do you infuse trust into your words? I mean, what is the pitch, pace, volume, melody, and tone of trust? What is the pitch, pace, tone, melody, and volume of happy, or of gratitude, or of sincerity, or of comfort, or of concern, or any of these emotions? They all have a different sense in the sounds we make when we say those words. And for leaders to be the best at what they do, they want to be able to communicate in the best way that others can receive, so that you make that connection. And people talk all the time about emotional connection, and we don't even know what that means. But when you do vocal training for speakers, you'll learn what it means. And it becomes something that you just begin to do naturally, and then you're authentic.
That's really powerful. And I think you're right in that a lot of folks really don't know what that emotional intelligence is and how it combines with not only our voice, but our physical body movements and all of that. And can you imagine if the leader actually were able to get all of those components in total alignment? We would have a lot better leaders out there. I think
Yeah.
that would be very valuable.
Yep. And it is that the body language and all that is part of our vocal training, because it connects right to it. And if we think about people who we think of leadership trainers out there, Tony Robbins, and pick any name you want, they've all done vocal training. So if you're sitting there listening to this podcast thinking, do I need it or not? Well, everybody that's successful standing on the stage did vocal training. So do you need it or not? Well, you decide, but they needed it. So,
And they continue to do it. They continue because they
absolutely,
know how powerful the voice is. And so
absolutely.
this is fantastic. Can you share with our audience how folks can get in touch with you? Anything in terms of something that how you work and how you might offer, like, uh, let's say if there is a way for someone to take a next step with you, what would that look like?
Sure, best thing to do is go to my website, prvocalcoaching.com. And when you're on the website, you'll see up in the top right a discovery call button option. So if you want to talk with me, you just click that and set up a one-on-one. Apart from that, just you can go through the website. There's a lot of information there. You can go over to the blog. You can watch a lot of little videos of me talking about different things. And then down in the footer, there's a thing that says, a link that says join email list. So if you want to get my emails, you can do that. So there's a lot of ways to learn on that website and understand what's going on. And on the website, you'll see my main product, which is the 5-pack. But there's a link where you can see all the different things that I do. So you can see all of that. And you can just get a sense of what it might look like if you wanted to do vocal training.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate your time and look forward to connecting with you and improving my voice.
Well, I've enjoyed being here. Thank you for having me. I
Absolutely.
appreciate it very much.
And thank you, listeners. Remember to lead yourself first, to lead stronger, longer. See you next week.
Bye, guys.